Before starting this course on career counseling, it is extremely important to understand why you should take your career choice seriously. In this video, we will help you understand the importance of making the right career choice for yourself. So, why is your career choice so important? It is important because it determines a lot of things in your life, including number 1, quality of life. Your career choice plays a huge role in deciding where you live, how flexible your life is, and the kinds of things you are able to do in your free time. Number 2, identity. Ask any elder person about their career and they will tell you about it as a part of their identity. They'll say something like, I am a journalist, instead of, I report news. Notice how everybody asks you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And not, what do you want to do when you grow up? This shows that your career choice shapes your identity. Number 3, impact. Every human life touches thousands of other lives in so many different ways. If you select any 60-year-old person who is about to retire, take a time machine, find him as an infant, throw that infant into trash, and then come back to the present day, you'll find that a countless number of things around you have changed. So whatever career you choose, the world will be affected by it. Anything that determines your quality of life, your identity, and the impact that you make should be taken very seriously. And that includes your career choice also. So we hope that this short video could help you understand the importance of making the right career choice. Having done that, we will now move forward to start our career counseling course. We are pretty excited and we hope you are too. So, let's begin. See you. Namaskar, good evening everyone, and welcome to ProBono's 93rd episode of the Daily Life Career Guidance podcast. The days have passed like a breeze, and it's been very nice to be hosting this podcast for such a long time, and I'm pretty sure that the 100th one will be a great one. And today also we'll have a great one because we have with us Dr. Preetham Mondal as our guest today, who is a principal, physics educator, and researcher at Durgapur Women College. And mind you guys, he's a doctor in physics, which is as close as being a doctor in rocket science as it gets. So guys, it will be an amazing conversation and we'll learn about the world of science, the world of physics, the careers in it. So welcome Dr. Preetham to our show.
Thank you, Aditya. Thank you so much for your nice introduction. Yeah, I'm very glad to be here actually.
And thank you so much for agreeing to come on the podcast. It was it's an amazing feeling to have you here with us. And especially since physics was not my strongest subject. So as an engineer by background again, so I had to prepare for, obviously like every other student, we had to prepare for physics, chemistry and maths as our subjects. And any person who has ever attempted an engineering entrance exam or has ever taken up a non-medical stream in science, you'll always find them with one weak subject among the three. So mine was physics because they say that physics, you need a very imaginative brain. You actually need to imagine, how things are happening. So Dr. Preetham, my first question to you is, did you discover in 10th, 11th and 12th only that you were strong in physics, or it was along the journey that you discovered that, okay, physics is something that really appeals to me?
All right. I think as a kid, I was like most of the kids. I was fascinated about nature, about space, about extraterrestrial intelligence. Because at the beginning, when I was in, I think, class 6, 7, 8, 9, physics was all for me was like going into space, exploring the black holes and trying to find out if there is any kind of other intelligence on the other planet. And I used to read when I was in class 8. I remember I read two books in Bengali. One is that Are We Alone in This Universe? And the mysteries behind the creation of the universe. So I was then just in class 8. So I was around 14 years of age, and that captured all my imagination, fantasies. And I thought, no matter what, I am going to jump into physics. But as you understand, being a class 8 student, I did not have any kind of practical experience, knowledge, or guidance, I would say, to know like what it feels, what it takes to go and take up physics. Okay. So even when I was in BSc, I remember when I was in class 11 for the first time when the faculties, I mean, after I completed my 10th standard, I went to Ramakrishna Mission Vidya Mandira. So there was a panel of faculties who had been interviewing us, and they told me like, "What do you want to become?" I told, "I want to be an astrophysicist" on the very first time, and they were like, "Astrophysicist? So what do you know about astrophysics? Why?" But point is that was where my dream was. Okay, so without understanding all the practical sides, okay, it was all about fantasy, I think. And as you are telling that physics equal a lot of imagination. And so along the journey, when I got into BSc physics, MSc physics, and PhD, then I think I understood little bit of the practical sides, okay, that what it takes to be a physicist, like we say, what it takes to be a doctor, what it takes to be an engineer, what it takes to be a politician. It needs a particular skill sets, a particular mindset, right? Yeah. So that's a different story I can share later.
Sure. So when you took up BSc Physics, and when you took up your undergraduation, usually the guests who are there on our show, I ask them, what did your parents say? But I'm pretty sure when an Indian kid takes up science, the parents are very happy to start with. So I also want to ask you, after BSc or during BSc, when you started to realize the practical aspects, how did your thoughts change? Because you eventually went on to become an educator in physics, and for that you need to have a very strong knowledge base. Plus, there's a certain amount of years that you need to invest before becoming an educator. So let's say if I want to become an engineer, or let's say even if I want to become a designer, a bachelor's degree is usually considered enough to get a job. Only in academia is that you need to do a master's, mostly a PhD also. So you need to invest a certain amount, a number of years into education, and without expecting too much money out of those initial years. So how did your thought shape during that time?
Okay, to be very honest with you, even in my BSc and even still today, I would not say my thought really changed a lot, because in BSc, when I expressed my desire to be an astrophysicist, the head of the department in physics actually called few students from our batch who had similar kind of fantasies, and he actually told us, see, that is the problem with the Indian students, you always are into theoretical aspect thinking and absorbed in thoughts. Why don't you do something very practical? You look around and you see there are so many problems in India. You are walking along the street and you see there are 10,000 problems crying for your help along the street. Don't you like to solve them? You are still in the fantasy to be an astrophysicist. That is good. He did not discourage us, but he actually opened up. He actually exposed us to a much wider problems. Then in MSc, I was fortunate to attend another type of class beside physics. Okay, so that physics professor, he used to take history and philosophy of science, and I used to attend that class. And he used to tell us that there is contextual science. That, are you able to hear me clearly, Aditya? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are. You are. Continue.
Okay, so yeah, so when I used to attend that class, being an MSc student, that we have to understand the society from which we are coming. For example, suppose some scientists in Switzerland or USA are doing this kind of science. For example, suppose they are doing some cosmology, trying to, during that time, although that term was not used, I am using it right now. Suppose they are trying to discover the gravitational waves. Okay, so should we do the same thing being in India, being in West Bengal, being in Kolkata? Do I have that kind of infrastructure? Can we dare to spend that much of money? The point is that we have so many problems in the society, and if we go back in the history, we will see that necessity is the invention of mother. That because of the need of the time, because of the need of the like society at that time, lot of theories came up and lot of inventions are made. So we have to like what our professors actually told us during that time, that physics actually is giving us the toolbox to think. That is like you are knowing all the rules and regulations, you are knowing how the nature works. Use that to solve the immediate problem that is bothering you as a citizen of the place of the country. So yes, that way I thought I was coming out slowly of my fantasy, and I was exposed to this grand reality. Yes, we have to do something for the society, for the reality.
Great, great, Dr. Mondal. But before I start, let me greet the audience. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the show. Namaskar, and welcome, Dr. Mondal. Thank you
Yes.
very much for that introduction. Now, when you
Thank
had
you, Dr.
that
Sir.
dream when you
Sir.
were in class 8, 9, and 10, and then going forward in 11 and 12 into your BSc, so how different was reality to the dreams that you had? Or was it matching?
Uh, yeah, I think this is all about sensitivity. Suppose I am living in West Bengal and
Yep.
I can be completely absorbed thinking about this gravitational wave or this string theory and everything, completely not putting any kind of sense to the widespread environmental pollution. We are living in a society where waste management system is completely non-existent. I mean, the place that I come from, there is no waste management system at all. So that is a huge amount of garbage and pollutions, and that is bothering the whole life. Okay, and in that place, if I keep on thinking about only string theory, that I don't know how good that would be being a citizen of this time. So we have to also be in this time. So yeah, I would say, like once I was discussing with another teacher of physics. He had been a school teacher, and he had been doing some research in that when I was in school life still then. And he was doing some research in black hole area, and black hole region. He told me that it's not so much fantasy whatever you see on the movies, Hollywood movies and newspaper. The moment you are doing research in black hole, it's all about lot of mathematics. You analyze so much data, and then you don't feel like that picture. Yeah. So point is that, and then I was, and another advice I got from a college student. One day I was talking to a college student in a bus stand, and she actually told me a very amazing thing. We have been discussing about the creativity, whether our educational system is killing our creativity or that is improving us. When I was in USA, so she told us that, I think the whole education system is giving us n number of toolboxes. We are learning all those toolboxes, be it physics, chemistry, maths, biology, or any discipline that we are studying. But ultimately, since we human beings are living in the society and we have to make a sustainable society, that sustainability is very important. So we have to develop a sustainable society, sustainable environment. So maybe all our knowledge and skills should be going towards that direction. How can we put our efforts to build a sustainable society? So then I started to think that how can my training in physics, my thoughts in physics can contribute to develop this kind of infrastructure, social fabrics, I would say.
Excellent. So basically, you are looking at ways how you can apply physics in everyday life to solve the problems that are there around us.
Yes, sir, I would say exactly like that.
And that is incredible, because I'm going to make a statement and I want you to react to this, because physics is that study of science which talks about the natural laws within which we live. And if we can understand that, we can make that much more sustainable and actually help in the development. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you, but I also have some points to mention along with your statement. That
Fantastic.
is, so if you give me a chance, I can speak on that.
Go ahead. The next 5-10 minutes is all yours.
Okay, thank you so much. So the moment we teach the class 11 students that, hey, you know that this word physics means actually the lecture on nature, physica came from this knowledge of nature, stuff like that. All right, so we teach students that you look around and you see so many amazing natural phenomena. You see the rainbows, the waves, the solar eclipse, and the planets going around the sun, and everything that you see, you can explain using the laws of nature, which physics is trying to help us to discover. But point is that in today's world, the moment I talk to most of my friends, they are doing material science. So I thought that if I go back 500 years back, then I see that people are driven by curiosity. Maybe they had some inner vision. Maybe the need of the time, maybe the government policies also controlled in which direction. Still, I think maybe they had a kind of freedom. So that is the reason I think in that era we find someone who is a hardcore physicist. He is also a painter, also a poet, also a lot of things, because he had the freedom, because he was driven by curiosity. He was not guided by that I have to do PhD, I have to publish a number of papers per year, and those papers has to go in big journals. So I think that free spirit, that creative spirit, is somehow, according to me, is missing in present era. I mean, we should be everywhere, just being human being. Just I'm trained in physics, that does not mean that I cannot enjoy all these things. I mean, point is that what I was trying to tell you, that nowadays I started to feel that physics is becoming more like material science. So why people are doing so much research in material science and material science? And then are we really looking at the nature, asking the fundamental questions? We think all the answers, I mean, all the questions have been asked. Maybe not. Actually, I have been to APS meeting this year in Denver in February, but unfortunately that meeting got cancelled. And I wanted to present there two topics. One is that the origin of gravitation. Okay. So still today, as you know, we do not really have any well accepted theory to explain the reason behind gravitation. We keep on telling that Einstein had given us a theory which is telling that there is a space-time curvature. Wherever the mass is, the space-time, like a single fabric, will be bent, and it is the curvature that is creating this force called gravitation. It is not a real force. But that theory is not still well accepted, means there are still a lot of scientific groups who are actually going against it. So I tried to go deeper, reading different papers which people are publishing, and I thought, okay, there can be some other reason, and people should be encouraged to think creatively, originally. I mean, when I look at my daughter, she has so many questions on her mind. Maybe when she is growing up, I should not just feed her with whatever answers are written on the book. That kind of freedom we should be giving to them, but that is somehow missing from the entire educational system, I think. Okay, and so physics, according to me, what I felt is no more the study of nature. It has become the study of material science. Find out the properties of this material so that we can use that to build solar cell, so that we can use that to do this thing. We want to build nanomedicines. So why should I call physics a branch to explore and understand nature? I mean, I should call physics is gradually going into understanding the properties of matter only. I mean, with my little intelligence, little knowledge, that is my feelings at present.
I think that's a fantastic point you brought up, Dr. Mondal, that our education system is somehow putting us into a box, and we are forced to think within the box and not come out of the box. And you talked about artists and physicists being the same person. Leonardo da Vinci. Yeah, there you go. And he's a physicist in his own, is one of the leading physicists of the time. Now, what do you think we need to do over here in our country so that, the child retains the curiosity, the imagination, explores the world, the universe, and actually does something that we can relate to 500 years from now?
I think we have to revive a sense that, or I would say beauty. What is that? That is a sense of wonder. Because we human beings look at things with the wonders in our heart and eyes, but that is somehow lost. Okay, so point is that in today's world, most of the students in school, they want to become a doctor, medical doctor, or an engineer, or a scientist, because there is glamour and social limelight or money or things like that. But most of the students, I have never heard anyone saying that I want to be a farmer. So who wants to be the next farmer in our country? It looks like into medical science, engineering, or any kind of good profession, they are forced into agriculture. So we are putting the whole food department in the hands of those who may not have those proper scientific training. Maybe they have knowledge, wisdom from generation to generation. So point is that it is wonderful that when you go to the field, when you look at a paddy grain, when you take a fruit and look at that is the creation of nature, and that evolved automatically by the nature's mysterious desire or play. That level, just not that I am a nanophysicist, I am doing nanoscience, nanophysics, I am going in the lab, and I mean, somehow that sense of wonder is missing. So at the very, very primary level, when students are still like less than age of 10, we have to instill in them that look around you, do you feel that wonder? Because don't do science. I mean, what I feel, again, I'm telling my knowledge is limited, my intelligence is limited. It is just my personal perception that as if science also has become like somehow a religion, like a doctrine, heap of like absorbing those, memorizing those, securing marks, but the feelings that we have to assimilate it, all our molecules from toe to the hair should be vibrating with the feelings that we are doing science because we love science. But in today's world, I think we are doing science because we want to understand science, because we want to manipulate science, because we want to make because you want to manipulate nature, because you want to make nature our servant. Suppose God has given us a mango tree. That is what I tell my students. Suppose God has given us a mango tree. I should be happy eating so many different types of mangoes. But being a scientist, I am going to do some genetic research to modify the mangoes and make a yellow mango or a red mango. So that as if I am not happy with all the different types of mangoes nature has given me. Have I understood everything, all the gifts that we have got from nature? So why should I be changing, manipulating nature? Like as if just give me 2 minutes more. I'm taking
Sure,
it
sure,
little
sure.
longer.
You are
So, so,
fantastic listening to you. Just go
so,
ahead.
so point is that I was thinking that suppose if I think about my lover, if I love somebody, I would like to know her more, not because I want to manipulate her, but my deep desire is to know her more, little by little. Same thing should be happening with science. The moment I am doing research, I should be loving nature. I should be willing to know her. If I say nature, her, I should be knowing her layer by layer, little by little, because I love her. Manipulate nature for completely using it. Am I clear? So
Yes, yes,
today's
yes.
science, I don't know. I mean, with my little perception, sometimes I feel puzzled that where this science is going. If I have some simple, ordinary questions, those are not entertained because those are like some old questions which have already been answered. Answers are found on textbook or Quora, and people will say go and. The point is that we should encourage this creativity, originality among the kids. If someone is coming up with a new theory of gravitation, being a school child, being in primary school, yeah, please write those things, present it. Yeah, who knows? That also might be accepted if that is having really some good base. So, point is that we have to encourage this originality that is missing in our education. And another thing, Sen, I would like to tell you that at the primary school, high school level, because I think by the age of 18, the type of personality in us is basically formed by the time we are 18
Yeah,
years
yeah,
of
yeah.
age. So by that time, we should really give freedom so that then like they can choose what the, but if you do not give them the exposure, how do they know what they like? This is like resonance. If I am exposed to a large spectrum, I will resonate with something. Oh, that is what is what I like the most. That school system also is becoming so much mechanical, because school also is willing to say that hey, there are n number of students getting 90% from my school. That's a business. That's a
It is.
business.
It is.
It is.
It
So
is.
we have to develop the human resource. I mean, that is missing according to me.
It, exactly. I mean, education. And I want the audience to react to it as well, respond to it, as well as you, Dr. Mundal. Is education has become a factory assembly line, and what we look at is defects, like we do when we produce a product, and we look at how many defects are there, and we try to fix the defects in that assembly line. Now, if education is an assembly line in a manufacturing process, the humanity, the human beings, as we go forward.
This is like a pre-programmed system. Pre-programmed system. I don't know who is exactly doing the coding, but maybe some higher forces, some higher authorities. We know them, yet we don't know them. They are kind of invisible forces, and
Shall
somehow
we
they
say,
have
shall we say the force is something we call money, the
exactly,
desire
sir.
for
Yeah,
money?
sir. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Money. So just imagine. Suppose there is Mr. X, who is the king or the samrat in this imaginary world, wants to have n number of soldiers, n
Yep.
number of laborers,
Yeah.
n two number of this kind of people, this kind of people, this kind of people. So that king or the samrat with his own core people will fabricate the whole design of the system in such a way that we have to train them to be clerk, to be soldiers, to be this, to be that, to be that. Because when people are thinking freely, creative mind, free thinkers are kind of danger to them. They don't really want people to think and ask so many questions. As like you, train them, customize them, train them so that they become exactly what we want them to become. We want them to become like this. Why they are deviating from the path? That is the point. A scientist, a physicist should be like that. There is a prototype. A teacher should be like this. Why should there be some kind of prototype? I mean, okay, I understand the average of the image becomes a prototype, but we should not pre-design it. Somehow, as you say, maybe yes, money is actually playing all the keys.
Well, background is not pure science. I am an accountant, but I work in strategy and all that sort of things. And what I have come to understand is globalization. That you have a globalization, the whole globe is doing something or the other to create one product, has actually created this assembly line mindset. It's a mindset. And so one of the things that I was involved in at the very early stages was software as a factory. How do we make software and do it like an assembly line? So I was one of the 6 people in India who started all that. And now that's exactly what's happening. It's software and it's like an assembly line. Somebody is coding in the US, somebody is testing in India, somebody is doing something else somewhere else, and it's all over the place. And the education system is following the money trail. It's running after the money trail. Doctor, as an educationist, as someone who's teaching young minds, what do you think should be the prescription, if there is any, as we step forward from here?
So I guess you are asking the question from a much broader perspective, not from the perspective of physics only, right? You are asking.
Yeah, because physics, I believe, is the foundation of all the others that you go forward.
Yeah. As you know, like we own up all basic sciences and engineering. So someone who has a knowledge in physics.
even all humanities subjects, it's also the backbone of philosophy, if I may say so.
Yeah. Actually, the point is that if we talk about science and engineering, like someone who has knowledge of physics may go to any field, and because being a physicist, our thoughts become such that we can analyze, we can see the patterns. Suppose a physicist is going into the world of music, he will be able to understand, recognize the pattern of music.
Physics is pure maths.
Pure maths. So it's all about pattern.
Math.
Yeah, it's all about pattern recognition. Yeah. So I think anyone who has the ability to analyze, to think, should be successful in any field, not just in his own particular field. Okay. Now coming back, what should be the prescription from my side? To begin with, I would like to name one person. I think he's very famous person, Udbhav Bharali. He is from Assam, and I read his story long time back. And when he was in college, because of the financial condition, he had to drop out, but he was very good with playing with different equipments, instruments. Okay, and at that time he built a polythene making machine which was around 65,000 rupees, when the market value of that machine was 5 lakhs, if I remember it correctly. So point is that, hello, can you hear me clearly? Am I audible?
Yeah, no, probably Mr. Sain's power went off. Today we are having a festival of technical issues, but I'm here, so yeah, we can hear you. Actually, Mr. Sain's power must have went off, so he'll take a second or two.
Okay. That man, after that success, went on discovering, because he has the eye. He would see so many problems in the society, and he would come up with engineering solution to that problem. So point is that as a civilization, if we want to have a sustainable society, sustainable environment, then we have to recognize the problem and we have to solve that problem together. It is not that he is a doctor, I am a physicist, he is that, we have to identify the problem. And like a movie making, the moment you are making a movie, you know who is the writer, who is the director, who is the musician, who is the actor. So this is like that. Everyone has different skill set, but you understand the problem. So I think in present the situation, we should work problem by problem, identify the problem, call the people, solve it, get it done, so that we can build a better society. And at the school level, as I have been telling, from like nursery to class 12, this range, students should really be given freedom. And if you look at the load of the syllabus, I mean, I still don't understand. If I look at the physics syllabus of class 12, 11, 12, sometimes I ask myself the question, how can I expect a student of 17 or 18 years of age to complete this entire syllabus, secure good marks in board exam, as well as cracking joint entrance IIT? I mean, that is such a huge syllabus. So I think the think tank who are designing the syllabus, they also have to think how much syllabus we should actually put, so the students have the luxury to explore themselves and also to understand the subject and proceed forward. Okay, they should not just be put in the box.
I think that is fantastic. And my last question before Aditya I can see from Aditya's face, he's got so many questions to ask you. But my last question, do you think this COVID-19 pandemic has given us an opportunity to change the way we look at education? And if it has, what should we do to take advantage of it?
Yeah, I think this COVID-19, first of all, I would say this COVID-19 has revealed to us the broken stage on which we human beings have been dancing. We did not even,
Fantastic. Fantastic.
we did
That's a
not
perfect statement, I would.
notice or care that already our infrastructure is completely broken. So just it revealed the whole like reality. Anyway, so now we are teaching, like in my college and school also, we are delivering lectures and we are like imparting knowledge online. So many students and teachers, although we are living in the online era, but we were kind of unaware of the potential of this online world. Now we can reach the students. Initially, they would think probably we cannot operate the machine and cannot operate this internet phone. But now we see that everyone can. They are participating. So that means students from anywhere in, I mean, if we speak about our country only, so we can reach to any student at any corner of the village. Just you have to provide him or her with a smartphone. And there are so many knowledge bank, so many good teachers and professors and so many websites and knowledge bank. I'd like to call them knowledge bank. So they can be connected to the knowledge bank and they can drink this water of knowledge bank whenever they like. So now no one can complain that just with a simple like 5,000 rupees smartphone and internet connection, so much things that we understand. Yes, that can be done easily. So I think we can utilize that. And not only that, like we studied only textbook, we did not have the digital media. Now the moment we are studying, suppose this is called suppose we are studying the human body. Okay, the moment we are reading that on the textbook and the moment we are seeing a nice amazing animation or a video, we know the difference of learning. It is so visual. So I think we can also use those animation, those videos, so that those things will be like a movie, so that when students will go out of the class, they would not know whether they are studying or watching a movie. Because I want to compare it, because people are fascinated by this picturization, this motion picture. So much better learning will occur to us, I think.
I think that's brilliant. Aditya, it's over to you. We lost you for some time. You're back. Go ahead.
Yeah, really sorry for getting lost in the middle. There was some tech issue, obviously, must have been apparent. But I think I've been listening to Dr. Preetham speak about so many things, and it's a fascinating discussion that both of you had on the education system of India and how this improvement. I think it struck a chord with a few audience members also, that they have also shot in their comments regarding what they feel about the education system. And obviously, it's a system that needs a lot of repair. So thank you guys, anyone in the audience who has commented on it. Thank you so much for your comments. Doctor, I also want to ask you a question regarding careers in physics, because as you said that, most of us step into physics with our fascination for astrophysics, if we do. So even whatever small fascination I had for physics when I was a school kid was again because of astrophysics. So there was this program called Through the Wormhole with Morgan Freeman on Discovery Science. Which used to be telecasted. So I was really interested in that. And that was very tough as compared to the physics they teach us in school, because I was in class 10th when this program started.
I would like to add just one thing, just you are reminding me something very interesting. When I was in class 12, I was going through H.C. Verma's book and I was reading about time dilation. And I got so much caught up with that. I started teaching my parents, and my parents are, I mean, they are nowhere close so much into that. I was telling them, see, this is what might happen. We can do time travel, and that is what happens. So, point is that yes, that fantasy at a younger age drives many students, if not everyone. Yeah, many students are driven by some sort of fantasy like that. Time travel. If we can do this, if we can do that. Yeah, just to remind me. Yeah.
Yeah, even Professor H.C. Verma, such a great promoter of physics. I think people across generations have just read his book and become fans of physics. I think he actually holds a lot of credit for inspiring many students to go into
Right.
physics.
Right.
So,
Right.
what are the career options in physics for a class 11th or a class 12th kid? Because there are many students who would ask me, sir, मुझे scientist बनना है. So scientists, they have a different image in their head. They are thinking of somebody, who's just making things move every day in his or her lab. That's the image that they have, and the image that they have is probably a lab assigned to only them. Whereas the real life research looks completely something else. That's a bit of an idea I have. So, being a physics researcher and an educator, obviously, so we know these two career options are there. What are the other career options in physics, if you can let our audience know for their benefit?
Mhm. Now, if I want to give the total summary, the conventional tracks are like people are doing after BSc, they can definitely be a teacher, school teacher, and I think there are some colleges also they accept like guest lecturer or lecturer. So that is one of the conventional routes everyone knows. Even after MSc, people can easily go into teaching profession after doing B.Ed or M.Ed also. Then after PhD, when you do get into PhD, that we do because most of us want to continue research because you want to learn what it takes to be a researcher, the tricks and all the methods, then write grants and all these things. So after PhD postdoc, the conventional track is like the candidates want to become a scientist, a professor and a scientist in universities like state universities, central university, IITs, NITs, right? ISARs are there, and they want to continue this culture of research because of course we have to continue this culture called research. Someone has to keep on doing that great grand journey. Okay, then some students then also go for R&D sector. They like to be like with the industry. They want, but I have heard many students who have, I mean, my friends who have been to R&D sector, they say that you might not have that much freedom because your research would be constrained by the need of the company. Okay, that will guide it exactly. Okay, so that's one route. And also I have seen people going into banking sector after doing PhD in physics. They completely moved into different sector like banking sector. They have gone to, that's called share market, because they have gone to finance department. Okay, into data analyst. Okay, they are data scientists in with different companies. So when I was in 11 12, of course I did not have much idea that I would think that only engineers can go and into companies or in the sector, but later I realized no, that's not the case. Even after your research career, you can go into industries, different companies. You can also work as a software engineer if you are good. During our PhD, we have so many skill set because in PhD everything is mixing up. My PhD was like physics, chemistry, biology, everything put together. Okay, so everything mixes up. Then if you can also become a software engineer after doing PhD in physics if you really love that. So, in that sense, I would say graduate school is a great place to discover, reinvent yourself, rediscover yourself, because that's such like 5 to 6 years you get. Although you are doing, like for me it was like that. Although I was doing a PhD in physics, but I had the opportunities to read so many books, to interact with so diverse set of people, and that thing can install a lot of great different type of skill sets in you. Okay, and also the most entrepreneur, you come back to your country and you see the problem and you try to solve it. When I came back to India in 2015 after I did my PhD in USA and a postdoctoral research in King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, I came back to India. I wanted to write a book to inspire the whole Indian community, because that time when I was working in the nanotech lab, I used to have this training in lab safety, and I used to see so neat and clean labs, and then I would compare that with the reality on India, that hey, there every day, those who are sweeping and those who are really into this cleaning industry, maybe we don't have that much care for them. So I came back and wrote a book called Rains from a Smoky Sky, and at the heart of the book was a multinational waste management company, and that was cleaning up not only our state and country, that was also had different, there's an imaginary company that was cleaning up the whole country, I mean whole world. Point is that, and most importantly, that startup company, the work ethics and environment was so amazing that everyone there would 4 hours a day, because they would say, oh, this is amazing company, so nice behavior, attitude, work culture, money wise, and debate, discussion, learning. So I thought, when I came back, I thought, although my background was in physics, I thought, what if someone likes my book, and what if there is a team who would like to make this kind of great waste management company. So point is that that is entrepreneurship, that you see problem and you come forward and try to solve it with whatever skill set we have acquired during our PhD and postdoc level.
So yeah, that's a lot of options. So guys in the audience, if you have any question about career options in physics, please shoot away and I'll put them at the end of the podcast to Dr. Preetham so that we can answer your question. Hopefully we can answer it well. Doctor, I also wanted to ask you this, that in physics, there are so many subjects, right? So many sub-subjects, and there are so many questions still not answered to a satisfaction. We are still searching for answers. So something as complex as a string theory, something as complex as a quantum. There's so many questions still. And one of the most fascinating and curiosity generating subjects is physics, if we genuinely think about it, because there are many subjects where we have pretty much a lot of answers as opposed to physics. So when students come to you, so let's say if a student comes to you with a complex question, let's say something about a topic that you probably wouldn't have researched as much on. So what do you like? What's your reaction to that? Do you research about it and let the student know, or do you ask the student to?
Actually, I am always in favor of giving the students the complete freedom to explore. It might take him or her some time, but if he or she genuinely feels about a problem, that is called research. I mean, with my again limited experience, what I find out, that I should not say this thing because I am not in a position to say that, but that is just my feeling, that we many students continue into PhD and research just because our advisors have just landed. Research should be bothering you. You should be consumed by that question. When we are in MSc or whatever discipline we are in, if we are bothered by something and we want to go much deeper into it, I mean, there are of course that kind of students, many students in India who are really bothered, and that is the reason they want to pursue a career in that field. They want to jump much deeper. If that happens, I should call that research. Just because, suppose, look at the term called quantum chromodynamics. Now, suppose some student just becomes fascinated with this term. Oh, I want to do research in quantum chromodynamics, such amazing field. I want to go into string theory. Wow, amazing. So, something this superficial fascination is there. But point is that if we really want to do great, I mean, once again, I'm speaking from my limited experience. If you want to do great, I think we have to genuinely feel. It should resonate with us. Hey, that is what I'm feeling. I mean, and to do so, you have to be exposed to a whole spectrum, because if you don't know much, then you will say, oh, that is what I want. But the moment you are exposed to a large, wide spectra, then you might choose, oh, no, not this one. I might go into that direction. So you should give them the full exposure. So students, when they are in MSc level, I think they should be attending many seminars, webinars. We have so many great things on YouTube in today's world. So they should be exposed to a much wider thoughts. See what people are thinking, what they have been thinking. It's like looking over the whole 1,000 years, all the great important thoughts and also the unimportant thoughts. Okay, the more they absorb, then maybe they will think, okay, now I understand, that is what excites me the most. I think in my little experience, I did not find that huge exposure. I mean, that should be there. Every week there should be like, if you look at a traditional university in India, do you think we have weekly seminar? Like every week there should be a departmental seminar, every week, if not more. and different talks, different speakers. Okay, if not the physical person, I mean, we can have some virtual meeting, immerse them, something like that. I think then they feel, sir, you want to do that? Please go ahead. Then he is ready for that.
Right. So I think there are two takeaways from this. Firstly, as you said, we should open up as many areas for the students to explore and choose one of the topics or subjects for research. And secondly, one thing I really liked about what you said is that we should do research because we are consumed by it, not because we have to produce a certain number of research papers in it every year. So I think this is very important because somewhere in research, even I have seen from, again, as you said, even I feel that I have even more limited experience in this as compared to you. But yeah, I have seen that there are many researchers just doing research because they have to produce a certain number of research papers every year, and it's not coming from the heart, and that is why the quality of research papers. So there is one statement Elon Musk says, I'm not attributing that to me. He says 95% of the research papers are useless. And yeah, I would take the plunge and say I do agree with that, because most of the research papers are not produced with that willingness to actually contribute to research. They are just done as tasks which I need to complete as a researcher. And then there are a few researchers who are consumed by research, who really want to search for answers, who want to contribute to research.
I agree with both of you, because research has become part of the assembly line. And it's one of those assembly screws and nuts and bolts that people have to tighten to get the product out.
Yeah. And then I would like to mention one point here. Like few months back, I was just writing one draft out of my own curiosity. That was like, for example, in West Bengal, the groundwater is contaminated, or we have to test it regularly to check if it is really contaminated with heavy metals, particularly in the industrial belt. Okay, so we researchers have to go down on the field and test the water, check whatever contaminants are mixed up with the surface water, with the groundwater. We have to report it to the right authority, and also we have to make the people aware of it, and also we have to immediately solve it. And most of the time, I think we are just writing a paper with all those data, publishing it in a great journal. And I think it is just, again, with my limited intelligence, I just, oh, I have done a great job publishing the paper, and we expect that some higher authority will read that paper and they will take the action to solve it. But in most of the cases, no one from that higher authority, so-called higher authority department, they will not read this paper. They are not going to come and solve it. So in the library, we have millions and millions of papers. If we just release that, no, there will be flood situation in India and Bengal. I mean, Bengal and India. I mean, so much knowledge is stuck
We'll get flooded with a lot of research papers.
But all the ponds are like, I mean, if I come back to environmental science, a physicist can come back. Suppose someone is working in the NASA, and people have also fascination for NASA. Oh, you're working in the NASA. Wow, amazing. ISRO. Wow, great. Those institutions are great. But we can also expect someone from NASA coming to India and working on cleaning up the ponds of West Bengal if he is affected. Suppose someone is working in the NASA, comes back to Bengal and see, oh my God, all the ponds, all the rivers are completely ruined. They are dirty, destroyed. Shouldn't we clean them up? Just because I'm a rocket scientist, it doesn't mean that I cannot come and dip my feet in the water and clean it up. We have to clean it up. We have to bring back the biodiversity. We have to make it green and clean, right? And we have to contribute. That's my simple point, actually.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point, actually. It's a brilliant point. Because
yeah, thank you for your appreciation. Thank you so much.
Because if we don't take care of the groundwater, then the green India will very shortly become a desert.
Yeah.
And about time management also, I wanted to ask you, because you are currently a principal, a physics educator, and a researcher, and all these three have different jobs related to them. So you probably must be handling some administration tasks, some, and obviously you are preparing lesson plans, then you're doing research. How do you manage your time?
See, actually, daytime, I am completely busy with my profession, looking after the academics of the college, okay, making sure that all the teachers are teaching properly. And most of the teachers in our college, actually not most of all the teachers in our college are dedicated. They are doing great jobs, I would say. I just need to check that, okay, we are delivering the material properly, teaching them properly, students are getting everything properly. So I spend my day doing that. Then in the night time, suppose after dinner, after 9 o'clock, I am kind of free. So 9 to 12, like on the average, I give myself 3 hours, okay, studying different articles. So that is out of my personal curiosity. So when I said that I was much interested to know the origin, the real origin of gravitation, I was giving myself 3 hours after dinner, and that time is purely for mine. Okay, so that is how I balance. It's not that easy to balance because yeah, so planning, designing, meeting with the management, and talking to the students, and then conducting parents meeting and knowing the feedback, having faculty meeting and telling them. But that I think I have been enjoying that a lot. But daytime job, but nighttime, yeah, I like to give it to myself.
Nice.
Simply
There's a
put.
small audience question, and the audience member, who is Anita ji, one of our most regular audience members, she wants both of you, Mr. Sen and Dr. Preetham, to throw light on this. So her statement is school plus graduation plus professional course equal to job equal to money equal to life according to society defined norms, or study plus exploration plus expertise equal to happy life. So, what do you prefer, or do you have some other formula? So, Dr. Preetham, if you can go first.
Okay, from my personal experience, after I came back from my postdoc research, after I came back to India, I started writing books because that was giving me enormous amount of pleasure. In 2 years, I completed 3 drafts of novel. I published one novel and completed a book of poetry. That was giving me enormous amount of pleasure, but no money. So during that time, I was not getting any money, but I was so happy person. Like I look at the pictures of that time and say, oh my God, I was like glowing because of the inner happiness. But of course, we have to earn money. We have to now in ideal situation, the job and duty. If I compare what is job and what is duty, I mean, being a citizen, I have to pay some, like if I am staying in this house, I have to pay some rent. So, a lot of great thinkers have said that if we are staying on this planet Earth and enjoying all the beauties of nature, we just cannot do it for free. We also have to put some rent, and that rent is doing some job. I can pick up a jharu, right, and I can actually broom and I can actually sweep the floor. I mean, if that way I can contribute, I will do it. If I can teach some students physics, I will do that. If I can guide them in some ways, I will do that because I need some money because that is how the whole economy, how society, the whole society is running. But that should not limit me. I would like to give 8 hours of my life for job. Then there are 16 hours, 8 hours for my personal, like 10 hours. Then rest of the time should be for exploring, where we should be in touch with our inner child. Everyone is a child at heart. If we are not in touch with our inner child, if we are completely buried in the world of job and money, then I think, according to me, life is completely worthless. You might be sleeping on the bed of money, you might be eating money, but according to me, that is not happiness. You should be like a kid if you want to play. Suppose you are a director of a great institute. You can pick up a fishing rod. In the weekends, you can go and catch fish if that is giving you pleasure. You can just take a bicycle, go around the village if that is giving you pleasure. But in India, there is certain image. Oh, he's a director of the institute. How can he go fishing like an ordinary man? No, you should be doing exactly without doing any harm to the society. You should be doing exactly what you love to do, but make sure you have enough money to run your family according to your standard. Whatever you would like to eat and feed. I mean, everyone has different standard. You should be earning, I don't know, 10 rupees or 100 rupees or 1 lakh per month, depending on your standard. Make sure that. But do not completely run behind it. Then life is completely gone. My feelings.
Mr.
I mean,
Sen?
honestly, just I like to conclude one thing. I would like to add one thing.
Sure.
Sometimes I keep on telling, if someone is offering me, just an imagination, if someone is offering me 10 lakhs per month, 20 lakhs per month for doing a particular job which will take 16 or 18 or 20 hours of my life, I would not do that. Because I am not driven by that much amount of money. I am driven by the total quality of life. That's my point. So we should balance, we should find the harmony. Then life becomes like a music, it becomes a true symphony, I think. Okay? Yeah.
Wow. That's really nice. That's the way you are imagining life to be a musical journey or a true symphony. That is in itself a very nice thing to understand. That how life can be looked at as something so positive. Mr. Sen.
After what Dr. Mundal said, it's very difficult for me to say anything.
Please, sir.
But I will just try, and I'll just say I read it somewhere, I don't know where. We all believe that we have two lives. But we start living when we realize we only have one. And what Dr. Mandol did was he summarized the fact that we have one life. What happens is we try to postpone everything. I'll do this after retirement. I'll do this after I finish my job. I'll do this in my holiday. Two lives. The day we understand we have only one life, that's the day when we start living. And thanks to Dr. Mandol, he put the whole thing in such a beautiful way. That's all I want to say. I don't want to say anything more.
Oh, that's great. That's great. The way you put it. The day we realize that we have one life, the day that is the time we start living.
Yes.
Really, right? Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Absolutely, these are two amazing and fantastic answers. I'd just like to add a small point to it that many people think, and these days I'm seeing a new trend that people think that earning money is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. I think any career cannot be sustained if there is no money in the career. However, money is not the only factor in your career. So to have a successful career, obviously there are many more needs than just good money coming in. You need to be happy. You need to have personal satisfaction while doing it. You need to be feeling that you're fulfilling your moral duty to the society. You need to adhere to your standards of a status, a social status, if you have any standards regarding that. And there are a lot of other factors. You need to be fulfilling your practical factors as in whether your parents are staying with you, or whether you want to stay with parents, or whether you want to stay with your partner. What's your lifestyle like Dr. Preetham mentioned, that if somebody asks him to work 20 hours a day, he would probably not even do it for 20 lakhs. So he is driven by lifestyle also. So these are many factors. Money is one of those factors. So it does matter, right? And there are people who would say that money does not matter. Yeah, it is not the only thing that matters, but it does matter. In the long run, if you want to sustain a career, it does matter. So as Dr. Preetham said, you need to find a balance between money and the other factors, and how you can put them together to gain a balance in all the factors so that all of them are according to your satisfaction. And then again, you need to have a self-sufficient model of addressing these needs. So if your needs are high in every factor, then probably it's difficult for you to find a job which gives you that kind of a balance. So also, Dr. Preetham, my last question to you would be, is there any advice that you want to give aspiring physicists or aspiring scientists or researchers or academicians?
See, I don't think I'm in such a position to give them such kind of advice, but I keep on talking to my students who are just very young, and I keep on telling them that is basically already has been said by many like thinkers, that if you really want to be a researcher, if you really want to be a scientist, be like a scientist, be like a researcher. Do not have any respect for a status quo. Do not, does not have respect does not mean that I'm arrogant. Only thing is that you should be asking any kind of question, relevant questions that is coming to your mind, and you should pursue that. Right. If you really want to be something, be physicist or any scientist, do it wholeheartedly. Do it in such a way that you become like that. That the moment I look at you, you become the murti of that. Right? For example, the moment we see Gautam Buddha in meditation, so he is no more just a human being. He is basically personifying that flavor that meditation is kind of frozen on his entire body. So if you really want to be something, doesn't matter what you want to become, please feel associated, united with that. It is like the spirit association. And then I think real pleasure will come, happiness will come. Okay. And we can also contribute in a much significant way, I think.
That's an amazing advice. And Mr. Sen usually asks this question. Today, I am, today probably he could not due to paucity of time. But he asks us, "What are you grateful for?" And it's a great practice that he has taught me that you should be grateful for one thing every day. So today, I'll tell you what I'm grateful for, and also summarize today's podcast with this. That I was noticing Dr. Preetham's whole conversation because obviously I'm the host, I have to notice. But apart from that, I was also seeing that in a podcast of an hour, he mentioned the phrase "in my limited knowledge" 6 times. I was counting actually. So why did he mention "in my limited knowledge"? It's a known fact that all of us as humans have limited knowledge, and we are learning every day, and still it is limited. Obviously, the potential of the human brain is limited. It's finite. But the thing is that the humility and the modesty of his nature is such that he had to remind himself every time that in my limited knowledge, and that's something which I think all of us in all careers can learn, just to be humble. Because I think in the recent times, what I have personally seen in the industry, probably this trait is missing from all of us, and this is something we need to inculcate as much as possible. The second thing which I saw is his curiosity towards science and his real passion towards physics. So, any person in any career, you can just judge their passion by the number of metaphors they are using of that subject to relate anything of life to that. So, to give you an example, we had our architecture podcast with Ayan Roy and Shomodeep Das, who always saw the architecture in any film scene. So even when the film was talking about something else, they would see, the background, space, how the space is being used and all that. So Dr. Mondal also used some certain physics metaphors for describing certain situations, which made me learn that, okay, that's the curiosity I think every scientist should have. And with this, I would like to end on his quote. And this quote I repeated after his answer also, which was, if you really want to become a researcher, the research should come from within, from a curiosity to answer that question, and you should be completely consumed by that question, and not because, yeah,
Aditya,
yeah,
can I add one point?
sure, please do. It's your
Yeah,
podcast.
I think in today's world in India, we have school, college, university, education system, infrastructure, everything. We just need to revive the mutual respect. And as Sir Albert Einstein had said, and many thinkers have said, not only Albert Einstein, but in the many, even if you go to a farmer and talk to an old person, he will say the same thing, that we have to remind ourselves that our inner and outer life depends on so many people around us, directly or indirectly, right? And we have to be thankful and grateful for that. We have to have that kind of attitude, approach towards everyone, that everyone is contributing. That is the reason we are able to do this research in the lab, because the man is sweeping the street properly, because that man is cooking the food properly, right? Skill set should be there. Mutual respect is a must. I mean, that we have to cultivate consciously.
सो
Yeah,
हमें
yeah.
बचपन से सिखाया जाता है कि कोई भी काम छोटा नहीं होता. ये भी एक और चीज है सोचने वाली कि हमें बचपन से सिखाया जाता है कोई भी काम छोटा नहीं होता. यस डॉक्टर.
Yes. That is what we learn. But the moment we come to the ground reality, na, then we see that is not what people have in their mind.
True,
That
that's very true.
that they don't have it. Even the people who are saying that, they also don't. So I say, whatever we say, that should come from within. If we say that word, that do your work like puja, koi kam chota nahi hota hai, we should also feel that properly. Then I think that is the essence of living full life.
And there's a logic to it. So वही है, it's not in our mind because there's a perception that is created कि हम किसी पर एहसान कर रहे हैं अगर हम अपने से किसी लो स्किल वाले इंसान को जो थोड़ा मे बी प्रॉब्ली लो स्किल का काम कर रहा है हम उसकी इज्जत कर रहे हैं. लेकिन वो लो स्किल का काम अगर नहीं होगा, पहली बात तो हाउ मच इज दैट अ लो स्किल, दैट गेट्स डिसाइडेड बाय अ नंबर ऑफ फैक्टर्स. हो सकता है कि वो इन मार्केट दैट्स कंसिडर्ड अ लो स्किल जॉब, बट प्रॉब्ली यू कैन डू इट. That's one more thing. And the second thing is that, as Dr. Preetham said, if I am able to do research, probably that's because somebody is sweeping the floor every day. If the person stops sweeping, after a month, it will become a room full of garbage. So either I'll have to sweep, so my work now increases and my devotion of time to physics becomes lesser, or I don't sweep and it becomes a room full of garbage. So there's a logic to that, and I think that's what we need to put to our minds कि अगर हम किसी की respect कर रहे हैं, that's not because हम उस पर एहसान कर रहे हैं, but because actually that person deserves respect, and it's our duty rather than our something that we are doing as a favor. So this is another thing which I think we reflected on today. So guys, as I was completing my code, not my code, basically Dr. Preetham's code, and that was that if you are doing research, definitely be consumed by it, and not because you have to publish a certain number of research papers in a year. With this, I want to thank Dr. Preetham so very much for gracing the podcast with his presence, Mr. Sen for all the amazing questions he always asks, Vinayak for streaming, and the audience
thank you so
members.
much. Thank you so much for calling me. I really enjoyed the session. It's a great, fantastic interaction with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Doctor.
much, Dr. Preetham. And thank you so much, audience members, for staying throughout, for giving us your comments, insights, and questions. And guys, you don't want to miss the last 7 podcasts that we are doing on a daily basis. This is a streak we are running. Today is the 93rd podcast. We'll do it daily till 100. And after that, we'll take in your opinions as to how we should be continuing it. Not doing the 100 ones on a daily basis after that. So guys, definitely do see the last 7 podcasts. You won't want to miss anyone. And with this, I want to end on the usual outro that Samant does, which is stay safe, stay at home because it is much more needed now. Take care of your family, talk to them, spend a bit of time with them, and keep tuning to Pro Bono's Daily Life Career Guidance podcast every day at 6 p.m. Like our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and all other call to actions that you can imagine. So guys, take care. Thank you so much for coming today. We'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Bye-bye.